What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Curated, a podcast about life and the melodies that make it all worthwhile. Welcome to the soundtrack of self-discovery. I am so happy that you've all decided to join in today. I've been talking for the past hour. You all don't know that. I'm only saying that because this is now the third time I've recorded this podcast. Here's the deal. And anybody who's listening right now, just trust me when I say that I appreciate you listening. I truly fucking mean that. I go on the most random fucking tangents sometimes. Even though I have a structure, trust me, y'all. To the left side of me is an outline of what I want to talk about. To the right side of me is key discussion points from research that I did. There is a method to this madness. Whether that translates to you all, I don't fucking know. And every time I record something and I sit here and I listen to it again, I'm like, dude, you make no fucking sense. So for anybody who's listening to this, who sticks around and listens to however long this episode's going to be, when I say that I appreciate you, I truly mean that. It takes a special type of ear to sit here and be like, what did you just say, bro? So thank you for being here. And if you're new and you're like, shit, what am I getting myself into? Stick around and find out. It'll be good nonetheless, okay? Trust me, I don't mean to deter you all from listening to this episode because this is the third time, and I hope that by the third time I'm making this, I make some sort of fucking sense. So stick around. This one should be better than the last two, hopefully. Today we're actually going to talk about something that I have been lingering with, a specific topic that I've been lingering with for quite a while. And that is this question, which is a question that I think every creator wrestles with at some point in their creative journey. And that is the idea and the question of whether creativity is driven by motivation, those magical bursts of inspiration, or is it driven by dedication, the ability for us to show up and do the work even when motivation seems miles away from us? Is it productive or even helpful to force yourself to be creative? Or can discipline actually create some sort of brilliance? Does true value only come when you're feeling inspired? We're going to talk about that tension. We're going to talk about those two forces that drive this fascinating concept of creativity, and truly, what does it take to get ourselves to be innovative, to be creative? Is it discipline? Is it motivation? Is it a combination of both? Whether you are a disciplined creator or whether you're like me, who's a dreamer, who's constantly chasing motivation, or whether you're somewhere in between, I'm hoping that today's podcast episode will enlighten us in some shape or form, okay? So I did some research from places like Frontiers, Cambridge University. There's a few research articles that I've pulled from to talk about this topic. The main reason why it was prompted, or why I wanted to talk about it with you all, was because I've been feeling unmotivated, truly, y'all. There are two factors that I think play into this. One of them is feeling overwhelmed at times. I want to do so much with Curated, with the podcast, with making content, with being in creative spaces. There's a lot that I want to get myself involved with, that sometimes it feels a little overwhelming, it feels daunting, and then I end up feeling unmotivated because of that. The other part of it is because there are other factors of my life that are also part of who I am as a person, right? I also work a 9-to-5. I have been training as of the last month and a half to, become a cycling instructor. There are things that are living outside of my creative space that I also have to think about on a daily basis, that sometimes at the end of the day, all I want to do is sit the fuck down and watch a fucking TikTok, watch some Netflix. That's it. But the thing is, leading into 2025, y'all, I'm fucking done being a lazy ass motherfucker. Oh, well, actually, let me rephrase that. I'm done feeling unmotivated or letting my lack of motivation or lack of inspiration keep me in this place, keep me stuck here. 2025, y'all, I'm gonna blow the fuck up. Trust me. We're gonna do the work. We're gonna get there. We're gonna just, we're gonna do shit. Like it's gonna happen. And I'm here to keep you accountable, and hopefully you're here to keep me accountable, y'all. Accountability buddies, whatever the fuck. I'm sure y'all had one of those at some point in high school. I had one of those. We're here to be each other's accountability buddies, okay? You keep me accountable. I keep you accountable. We're gonna grind. We're gonna get the shit done, okay? So let's talk about discipline and motivation. And hopefully by the end of our conversation here, we come out of this with some tactical things to do and we start getting our shit together. Period. Okay? I want to talk about first the role of discipline and creativity. In the articles I was reading, there was this notion that discipline often triumphs fleeting motivation. There's this research that suggests that creating routines and discipline can foster consistent creative output, even in the absence of motivation and inspiration. Regular engagement with the tasks can lead to creativity over time as the individual becomes deeply immersed in their work. Now, let's take that apart a little bit. I think what the research from Cambridge is mentioning in this statement is that if you set routines, if you set discipline, you can, at some point, create something. I used to think that if I sat myself down to write a song, to make a podcast, that I had to have an output for it. The fact that I recorded this 3 times is a testament to that, y'all. Or this is my 3rd recording. The first 2 times, I sat my ass down to talk. I listened to the podcast, and I was like, dude, you make no fucking sense. I recorded it again, and now we're here again. I made something those 2 times, whether it was up to par or what I wanted to put out to the world. That's a different story, obviously. But again, that is an example of how I oftentimes used to think that if I sat myself down to record a podcast, I was going to get the perfect episode out every single time. Or if I set myself down to write songs, I was going to write a fucking song. Sometimes all we need to do is create the space for it. That is a step in itself, to let yourself sit down and try to write a song. Sit down and say, for the next hour or 2, I'm just going to sit here and mingle around with my MIDI, with my keyboard, with, Ableton, with GarageBand, whatever the fuck is. I'm going to try to write a song. I'm going to just allow the space for things to potentially happen. But reminding yourself that you don't necessarily have to have an output for it. That you don't necessarily have to have an outcome for doing these things. That allowing the space for it in itself is good enough. And that if you constantly allow this space for yourself, at some point you will create something. Because another component of the research stated that creativity loves constraints. When you're setting schedules, when you're creating a discipline, you're fueling creativity by forcing problem solving and focus. Now, I think this goes against the myth that we all once thought that in order to be creative, we have to be in like this free-spirited spontaneity type of environment, that we have to just let ourselves be, and that we have to feel motivated, feel inspired in order to create something. I think what this is saying is that creativity actually does like to be constrained. That if you allow the space, that if you allow the guardrails, that if you allow the structure, that what you are doing is you're training your brain to essentially focus itself in that space. That you are allowing your brain to escape from the day-to-day shit that you have to do. Tomorrow I have work, I have a class, I have this, I have that. And what you're doing is you're essentially just allowing yourself the space to be creative. There doesn't necessarily need to be an output. You're just allowing yourself to be in that space. And at some point, the more you allow yourself to be in that space, the easier it's going to be for yourself to get to be creative, to get to actually make outputs. An example of this is I read this in a book. It's called um, How to Write Better Lyrics. And in the book, the first chapter, the only chapter I read, it talks about how there's this thing called object writing. Object writing essentially is when you pick any random object in the room or anywhere visible and you write for 10 minutes anything that comes to your mind about that specific object. What's interesting about object writing and the point of object writing is, and I'll use the analogy or the metaphor that was used in this specific example in the book, but they said object writing is essentially like this for lyric writing, right? Imagine there's like an ocean, and at the very bottom of the ocean, there are these words, phrases, imagery. There's just all this really juicy shit to write songs. It lives at the very bottom of that ocean. Every time you set those 10 minutes to write about whatever object you see, what you're allowing yourself to do is you're allowing yourself to dive into, to try to get those juicy things out of the ocean. Those juicy lyrics, those juicy words. You're allowing yourself that time to do that. The more you dive to do these things, the more you dive to try to get those things out of the bottom of the ocean, the faster you're going to be at it, the sooner you're going to get to them, and the more you're probably going to get out of it, right? And so, again, the more we allow spaces for ourselves to be creative, the more we train our brains to actually make an output, to actually be in creative spaces, and to actually exercise our creative selves. Now that we've talked about discipline, let's talk about motivation. The one thing that I for sure fucking lack all the time. I have probably the most fleeing motivation there is. Like, there are moments, actually, sometimes it's hours where I'm like, for 2 hours I feel like God, and I'm like, I gotta get all this shit done. There are days where I'm like, 3 days in a row, I'm like feeling good about my fucking grind, and then that shit goes away, and then it's like months when it comes back. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's me getting older and the lack of serotonin in my life, but whatever the fuck it is, I lack motivation at times. Most times. Motivation, there's two types of motivations that these articles talk about. And if you know, I've been in psychology courses or know anything about psychology, you probably know a little bit about this. I actually majored in psychology when I went to school. So I did learn about these two types of motivation types. One of them is called intrinsic motivation, and the other one's called extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is that motivation that is driven by personal passions, things that you innately are like, I'm going to do this because it fuels who I am as a person. Extrinsic motivation is rewards, external pressures, things like, I don't know, making content because you have a brand deal, or making content because you're trying to get views. Extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation would be making content because I love to talk about X, Y, and Z. Making content because I just love to put myself out there. Examples there. Studies show that the lack of intrinsic motivation can lead to burnout, or even can lead to burnout even with discipline in place. So a lot of us, and that's something that I had to sit myself down and actually ask myself. I had to ask myself, do I have intrinsic motivation for doing this or extrinsic motivation? Is my true reasoning for making content or doing podcasts or whatever because of deep personal passions for doing it, or because I'm trying to catch the views, I'm trying to get followers? And listen here, I'll be completely honest with y'all. I have both. I do have extrinsic motivators, which are trying to build something, trying to create something out of curated, trying to build a community, trying to get people to join me in this collective. And there are intrinsic motivations. There's just the genuine passion that I have for having conversations about creativity. At times, the intrinsic motivator outweighs the intrinsic one. At times, I do feel like a lot of the things that I may do is just to catch views, just to get people to follow me, to do X, Y, and Z, and it just sometimes feels disingenuous. It feels like I'm just posting shit or I'm doing shit because I'm just trying to, grow as fast as I can. One thing that I've started to realize in making content is that, if I ever do want to make something out of this, it's not going to come tomorrow. It's not going to come the next day. It's probably not going to come for a couple of years. Maybe 2025 though. I'm honestly betting myself on that year, y'all. But a lot of content creators say this too. A lot of successful ones say this, that it took them years of putting out videos, of making content until something finally popped up for them, right? I had to get myself comfortable with that. I had to get myself comfortable with it. I'm getting to a place where I'm just like, you know what? It is what it is. I'm gonna sit at 200 views on my TikTok for quite a while until somebody's like, you know what? You have something of value to say. Or you know what? I fuck with you as a person, so I'm gonna follow you. And that's chill, That's gonna be the case for a little while. I have to now really train myself to find that intrinsic motivation to make content, to make more podcasts, to do these things. And in doing so, it really does take me finding the spaces and the things that will get me to have more of that. Right? As an example, I have a few podcast guests coming up here that I truly have always wanted to talk to because they're genuinely just like incredible people. Um, the fact that I got to talk to Drake Lores in the last like video podcast episode, like with a guest, was like a big deal for me just because I've never been able to talk to a content creator of, that sort ever in my life. I'm a big fan of Dre and the content that he makes in general. He seems like a cool fucking guy. He was a cool fucking guy. That was a big one for me to get to do that. And that really, like, I was motivated. I was like, oh my shit. I was like, I can't wait for this conversation to come about. I want to practice. Like, here are things I'm going to ask him, like, all this shit, right? These next podcast episodes that I have, I also feel the same way. Like, and genuinely, like, I feel excited to really talk to these people because of just the wealth of knowledge that they have to offer. And just, like, they're just really cool, incredible people. That's one place where I've started to find a lot more intrinsic motivation for. The fact that I get to sit here and have these conversations where I get to just like really like think all these things that I've been talking to you all about have ignited a new sense of how I think about creativity. That in itself has offered enough intrinsic motivation for me. Like I'm learning a lot just by chatting with you all about this very concept. Intrinsic motivation right there, right? The fact that I know that this is going to be something, like that I know that I'm going to build something out of this, that I know that the more effort I put into it, something's going to come out of it. That also is intrinsic motivation. I need to fuel all these parts of this intrinsic motivation that is coming into play constantly. I need to find ways to fuel these spaces. And that's the big key thing that I've unlocked right there, is that I need to find ways to become more inspired in these intrinsic motivators. I need to figure out what are my intrinsic motivators. I need to sit down and literally write all that shit out. And every time I'm out there trying to be inspired, be motivated, I need to find ways to fuel those areas of my life. Whether it is by surrounding myself with people that soar, whether it is about reading up on topics, whether it is about, I don't know, like I need to find ways to fuel those areas because you need intrinsic motivation and you need discipline to really make this shit work. Now, one thing, and I think probably the culmination of what our discussion is going to be about today, that the Cambridge article talked about was that inspiration is a distinct and critical aspect of the creative process, as it transforms raw ideas into actionable output. While inspiration often sparks creativity, it may not sustain unless combined with dedication. Period, y'all. Now, I want to kind of round things out by lastly talking in terms of the psychological side of it about this balance of discipline and inspiration. A balanced perspective suggests that discipline acts as the foundation for consistent creativity, while motivation and inspiration provide the fuel for exceptional breakthroughs. Again, discipline is the space that you're making to be creative. Motivation and inspiration is what may lead to an output. You need both. That was my big unlock. Sometimes I was like, I just need to be motivated. No, I need to sit my ass down to allow myself to be creative. And sure, I need to find ways to fuel the intrinsic motivators in my life, find inspiration, but I need both. And so, individuals who have this growth mindset, the belief that the skills that they develop through effort, they tend to persist through creative blocks using discipline. Again, even when there is no motivation. Those people who continuously are like, I need to, I'm gonna grow and I'm gonna keep doing these things because of the effort that I put and the skills that I developed towards doing these things. Those people persistently are able to break through these creative blocks, persistently are able to get through these moments where they feel unmotivated because they have that type of mindset. And so what I need to do is I really need to sit my ass down and figure out, how do I cultivate a growth mindset? How do I sit myself down and think, okay, even when I feel unmotivated, I'm still gonna get up, I'm still gonna sit down, and I'm still gonna try to write a song. How do I get myself to do those things is truly what I need to focus on, right? And so with that, I want to leave you all with a few ideas from, again, some research that I did about how we can build discipline for ourselves and how we can find spaces of motivation, some practical strategies of how we are able to combine discipline and motivation. Okay, the first one is to start small. I know it sounds stupid. I know it sounds fucking cheesy. I know sometimes, y'all, the basic shit is really truly what is the most impactful, but starting small to build momentum is a big one that I just read pretty much everywhere that I searched. When you know, allow yourself to focus on a few things, you are dedicating the proper space and time to actually make something out of those things. Again, as I started the podcast episode, I told you all I have this laundry list of this just big list of all these things that I want to do. And how overwhelming that list was for me was truly what was preventing me at times from doing them, because I was just like, there's just too much that I want to accomplish, not enough time. But to be honest with y'all, if I take all of those elements, if I start to outline, okay, here are the things that I could do, here are the things that I could tackle today, here are the things that might take a little longer, but if I take them step by step, if I condense these into more actionable things, then maybe I could get to them. Maybe I could finish them at some point. That is much better than just putting that fucking laundry list away and just being like, it's too much, right? You truly have to start small to build momentum. The other one is you have to create this low pressure environment for creativity. And I kind of mentioned this earlier in the episode, but in order for us to be creative, we have to allow the space, but we also don't have to tie ourselves to creating something. We can't sit there and be like, okay, today I'm going to write a song, but then actually expect us to write one. You have to put yourself in low pressure environments. You have to really ask yourself, okay, I'm going to allow myself this time to potentially write a song. I'm not going to expect myself to write a song, or I'm not going to expect myself to write the next fucking big pop hit. I'm just going to allow the space for it. Really allow yourself the ability to just play, to just experiment. Not everything, every moment has to be for fucking output. Oh, also, not every fucking moment has to be a moment to be shared on social media, y'all. That's a big one for me. As of recently, I've started to just sit and play around my keyboard and not record it or not try to do something so I can post it on TikTok. Sometimes you just have to do shit for yourself. Truly, y'all, feed your intrinsic motivators in life. Feed yourself before you try to feed others. Truly allow yourself the ability to just experiment and play for the sake of doing just that. No output and no reason for you to put a camera in front of your face to do it. Okay, just do it because you want to do it. The last kind of thing in here that I saw from doing some research, is this idea of incorporating rest and inspiration. You have to allow yourself the grace as well to sometimes sit down and watch motherfucking TikTok. Doom scroll on that shit. Like, it's okay. You have to allow yourself the grace to just have a day where you just maybe are not necessarily too hung up on making shit, on doing something. Maybe you just sit there. Like, why the fuck is that so wrong too, you know? Of course, I'm at least in the space where I'm done trying to sit, like I've done enough of that. I'm trying to create a schedule and a space for myself to become a little more disciplined with the things I want to do. But there will be moments. Trust me. The doom scrolling is real in my motherfucking life. I sit sometimes for hours on TikTok. Is it healthy? Absolutely not. But do I allow myself to do it once in a while? Why the fuck not? Sometimes I need to just sit there and have a laugh or watch some TikTok drama. I don't fucking know. Like, sometimes you have to do it just because it feels good. Allow yourself the ability to have those moments. Allow yourself the ability to just rest. And I'm taking TikTok doom scrolling as my rest because sometimes it truly is just that, y'all. I just need a time to just mindlessly scroll on social media. But moments to read a motherfucking book, to just sit and watch Netflix, to just sit down and just do nothing. All of those things are important because if you don't allow yourself the time to just refuel, the time to just take a step away from the creative process, from trying to make something, from trying to do something, from trying to be in a creative space, then you're going to also burn out. So allow yourself the space to just step away for a little bit, Allow yourself the ability to do that. Now, I want to ask you all to end this motherfucking podcast. Do you think discipline helps or hinders creativity, and why? Do you find yourself to be more often than not disciplined about the way that you work around a creative process, or do you usually rely on motivation? Like, I truly want to know everyone's thoughts on the specific topic. I'm finding ways to build more discipline into my life. Again, with also the grace to allow the space for inspiration and motivation to come, because you need both. You need both to do that. But I want to know from you all how you feel about the specific topic. So drop a comment, let me know over voice memos, shoot me a DM, follow me, just like anywhere and any space. Let's keep the conversation going because that's truly what these episodes are about, y'all. I'm here to tell you all what I've learned, and you're here to tell me about what you know, and we're here to grow together, okay? With that being said, I truly, truly, truly appreciate you all listening in. This feels like a little more structured than the last episode I had, y'all, so hopefully I'm not sitting here a few minutes later telling you all that I'm now on like round 4 of recording this podcast episode because Jesus Christ. But anyways, I truly, truly do appreciate you all listening, and I will catch you all on the next one.